Welcome to the Connect to Virtual Machine tutorial for Mac and Linux users. If you are a Windows user, please reference the Connect to Virtual Machine tutorial for your specific machine. Many labs that teach networking or security skills will rely on tools that are made to be ran from a command line interface, or CLI. This is also true for the majority of labs performed on Genie infrastructure. However, you may find certain tasks become much easier or are more familiar while using a graphical user interface, or GUI. This tutorial will provide a walkthrough for setting up both CLI and GUI on a machine hosted on the Genie infrastructure. You should already have your virtual machine's private key stored to the .ssh directory. If you haven't, we'll refresh on that right now. If you've already done that, then you can go ahead and skip ahead to the next step in the video. If you haven't, please watch this part so you know how to store and locate your private key. So first, we'll hover over our username here on the top right toolbar and go to SSH keys. Then you're going to click on Download Private Key. This will download your private key to your machine. Then you're going to go to Terminal. Once you're in Terminal, go ahead and access the default directory for wherever your downloaded files are stored. For Mac users, it'll probably be a Downloads folder. Now we want to make sure and verify that our key is here with ls. We can see it is here, ID, Genie, SSH, RSA. We need to go ahead and change the permissions with chmod to 600 and then underscore ID, Genie, SSH, RSA. So go ahead and change those permissions. And these permissions are changed so that way we can properly use the private key with our Genie infrastructure. Then we want to move that file, our private key file, to the .ssh directory. And we'll go back and verify that it's there. And it is there. All right. So we're good to go on that. So that's how you get your private key file downloaded and moved properly to your .ssh directory. And if you don't have a .ssh directory by default, then just in your home directory do make dir .ssh. And that will create the .ssh directory for you. So going back to our Genie page here, suppose that we have the details of a virtual machine that are listed like you'll see here on the screen in a second. And so you'll notice that we have a client vPark that we're going to be connecting to and getting the GUI and CLI established so that we can use this vPark Genie machine. To provide the GUI and CLI on this machine, we'll be using Terminal and Virtual Network Computing, or VNC. Here's what we're going to do. Step 1 will be to connect to the Genie machine with the SSH command. Step 2 will be to run VNC server on our Genie machine. Step 3 will be to install a VNC client on our host machine. And step 4 is to connect to the VNC server on our Genie machine. Let's begin. So with step 1, we're going to connect to the Genie machine through Terminal. So you'll see multiple SSH lines listed here, and they correspond to a particular username. And this can be seen on the right side of the SSH line in the command. You want to highlight your SSH line and copy it and paste it into Terminal. And in order to determine which one is yours, if you go up here to your username again and go to Profile, we'll open up a new Profile tab. Look here by Genie username. The username that you see there is the username that you have on Genie. And so if we go back to our slice details, you want to look for the SSH line with that username. So in our case, it's going to be SSH Park Genie. So we're going to highlight this, and we're going to copy it. Then we're going to move over to Terminal, and we're going to go ahead and paste that into Terminal. Now, before our username, we're going to add in the path to our private key file. So that's going to be -i, and then the directory of your private key file. And after that, you'll have what is the basic SSH command that allows you to SSH into your Genie machine. But first we're going to use this command to do something else. We're going to use it to make a tunnel for our VNC client to connect through. So we require a few additional configurations for this command. We're going to want to add in our VNC port number, which is 5901. And you'll see that change here as we add in, after the path to a private key file, -L space 5901 colon 127.0.0.1, which is our localhost loopback address, colon 5901 space dash capital N space -F space -L. And one more change we'll make is we'll go ahead and get rid of the @ sign in between Park Genie and PC1 and separate that into a username, Park Genie, and the address for our Genie host, pc1.instagenie.umkc.edu. So this will be the command that you will use to establish the tunnel. So go ahead and hit return. And it'll ask if you want to make sure if you want to connect, if this is your first time connecting. Yes. Enter in the password for your private key. And then after that, you should see just a return to your normal user prompt on terminal. And so this means that we have successfully set up the tunnel connection into for our VNC to connect into our Genie machine. And so now that we've established that, we have to go back and enter in our regular SSH command without all the extras. So we'll go ahead and undo the changes that we did. So we'll reinsert our @ sign and get rid of these different pieces of information for establishing our tunnel. And now we're left again with the standard SSH command. So once you have that, go ahead and hit return. You'll re-enter your password again. And now you should see a green username being your Genie username at the name of your host, in this case vPark. And that indicates that we have successfully logged into our Genie machine. So from here, what we want to do is next start up VNC server on our Genie machine. So we're going to issue the command VNC server, and it's going to ask you for a password to access your desktop. So go ahead and input a password and verify it. You want to choose no when asked about entering a view-only password. And then you'll see some output here, new X desktop and creating default startup script, some other things. This indicates that you have successfully started up VNC server on your Genie machine and that you are now able to access it. And you'll want to remember that VNC server password you just made. You'll be using it whenever we log in through our VNC client in order to access your VNC server. So now what we need to do is install a VNC client on our host machine. I've already done this step ahead of time, and what we recommend using is a program called VNC Viewer. And you can get this program, which you see here on the screen, if you go to the website realvnc.com/en/connect/download/viewer. If you go to this website here, then you will be presented with this page. It should automatically have Mac OS or Linux, depending on your platform, selected for you. And then you can just click here to download VNC Viewer. And once you have it downloaded and installed, then you'll see this window come up, and you'll have an enter a VNC server address bar at the top. And so we created a tunnel earlier, you'll remember, on port 5901 of our local host. We used our localhost loopback address. And so up at the top here, we'll go ahead and enter localhost :5901. And this will allow us to go through the tunnel that we established earlier. So you go ahead and enter that. Then you'll be presented with this prompt. Go ahead, just click continue through it. Then you'll be asked for your password for your VNC server that you set earlier. Go ahead and enter that in. And you'll go ahead and be presented with this window here. And this is your VNC server window. Now, this is very important. You have this prompt here, welcome to the first start of the panel. You want to choose use default config. If you choose one empty panel, then you'll miss out on some features that make it easier to navigate around VNC Server's GUI, and you'll just generally make life a lot harder on yourself. So you want to select use default config when prompted here whenever you connect to your GUI for the first time. So now if you take a look around, you have access to a graphic web browser and a terminal program. And so your environment has the best of both worlds. And you see here we have our terminal. We also, if we have Firefox installed on the vPark image by default. So if you could see, you can go ahead and start that up, and you'll have a graphic web browser as well. So you can have all the familiarity of using the internet browsers you're used to, as well as being able to use command line for your Genie Labs. When it comes to reconnecting to your VNC server, the process is slightly different from the initial connection that we've covered here in this tutorial so far. So when you want to reconnect to your VNC server, all you have to do is reestablish the tunnel that connects to the VNC server on your Genie machine, and then come back, open up VNC Viewer, and log into your VNC server. Now, your tunnel, even if you close your VNC Viewer here, as long as your terminal here is running and you don't kill the process that is running the tunnel, then you should just be able to open up your VNC Viewer and be able to automatically tunnel right back in. So for example, I closed my viewer. Let's say that I left my project alone for a while and I came back to it and I still had this terminal up and running and I hadn't closed my tunnel. All I need to do is open up VNC Viewer like so. Find my local host 5901 that I connected to earlier, and go through the same connection steps as earlier. And you can see I'm right back to where I left off. Now, if you did not if you killed the process, whether that be manually you killed the process or you restarted your machine and worked on your project the next day, in that case, you will have to re-enter the tunnel command that you did earlier. So you would have to take this command here, ssh-i, and then your route to your key, and this tunneling information here you see in the middle. You'd have to take that command, re-enter it, and then re-establish that tunnel. And once you've done that, you can reopen VNC Viewer and connect to your VNC server like normal. A good way to find out is if this tunnel is currently persisting is to re-enter this command, and if you should get output indicating like this, that the address is already in use and that it could not record local forwarding. If that's the case, that means that your tunnel is already established and that you don't need to set it up again. And you can go ahead and just reconnect to your VNC server like normal. Now, if you close terminal and shut off your machine, or again, kill the process that was running that tunnel, then you would have to reissue this tunnel command, input your password, and it would reestablish that tunnel. But if you see this output here about the address already being in use and that you can't request local forwarding, you know that that tunnel is still up, and all you need to do is reopen VNC Viewer and reconnect to your VNC server. If you have any other questions about vPark, please refer to the vPark FAQ document. The document contains pictures and steps to answer questions like how do I extend the lifetime of my slice resources, and how do I download and upload documents to my Genie machine. If your question is not answered by the FAQ document, please refer your question to your instructor, who will be able to assist you further.